Chapter 1: The Return. I still remember the sand in my hair. Summers used to smell like dry grass, warm dust, and the strange sweetness of melting ice cream. And there was always Luther. My cousin, my partner in crime, my rival, my shadow. We were born less than a year apart, and our mothers, sisters who bickered endlessly but never lived far from each other, made sure we grew up like siblings. He was the boy who stole my toy shovel in the sandbox, the one who dared me to climb the tall apple tree in our grandmother's garden, the one who laughed when I fell but offered his hand to pull me up again. That was my childhood. Then, in a blink, it was gone. At 17, Luther left. He was accepted into a university abroad, some prestigious place my family kept boasting about at every gathering. I told him goodbye with a careless smile, pretending not to care. But the truth was, once he was gone, the silence of our street felt sharper. My summers were quieter. I learned to fill them with friends, books, and later, boyfriends who never lasted more than a season. Yet nothing ever filled that specific absence. 3 years later, I was 19 and home from my own studies for the summer when the news spread. Luther was back. The family reunion was predictable. An endless table of roasted chicken, salads piled high, my uncle's homemade wine, and my aunts gossiping with their sharp eyes darting across the table. I was halfway through a polite conversation with my mother's colleague when I saw him. At first, I almost didn't recognize him. The boy I had known was all elbows and knees, perpetually scuffed from some reckless game. But the man who stepped through the doorway carried himself differently. Straight-backed, confident, with that ease people only acquire once they've lived somewhere else, somewhere bigger. His dark hair had grown thicker, his jawline sharper, and he was taller, much taller. "Janet," he said, with that half smile I remembered, and suddenly it felt like no time had passed at all. I stood to hug him, my heart skipping unexpectedly. "Luther, finally!" The hug was brief, polite, nothing unusual. But as I pulled away, I caught myself staring, noticing the way his shoulders filled his shirt, the new depth in his voice when he spoke to my mother, the way everyone's eyes seemed to follow him. I told myself I was only surprised at how much he had changed. Nothing more. The evening stretched on, filled with clinking glasses and laughter. He sat across from me, and every now and then our gazes met. It felt strange, like looking at someone familiar, but through a veil, a distance I couldn't measure. When I teased him about forgetting his roots, he smirked and teased me back about still living in the same town. We laughed, and for a moment, we were children again. But it wasn't the same. By the time dessert was served, I already had an idea. If Luther was back, even just for the summer, I wanted to make it count. I leaned across the table when no one was watching and whispered, "Hey, since you're home, we should go out. Just us. Celebrate properly." He raised an eyebrow. "Celebrate me coming back?" "Exactly," I said with a grin. "There's a new bar downtown. You'll like it." He didn't hesitate long. "Next week?" "Next week," I confirmed, and for reasons I couldn't explain. I felt a flutter in my chest. That night, after everyone left, I sat by my window with the cool night breeze brushing against my skin. I thought about Luther's laugh, deeper now, resonant in a way it hadn't been before. I thought about the subtle attention he drew from my friends, even from the waitress who refilled our glasses. And I thought about how, for the first time, I was nervous around him. He was still my cousin, still the boy from the sandbox. Yet I couldn't deny it. Something had shifted. Something I didn't have a name for yet. Chapter 2: The Bar. The following week came faster than I expected. I had almost convinced myself that inviting Luther out had been casual, nothing worth overthinking. But by Friday, my nerves betrayed me. I changed my outfit twice before settling on jeans and a dark blouse, something simple but flattering. My friends, of course, insisted on coming along. "If your cousin is as handsome as you say, we need to see him," one of them teased. I rolled my eyes, but didn't argue. Part of me wanted them there, proof that this was just a normal night out. When we walked into the bar, Luther was already at the counter, leaning casually with a glass of beer in hand. He looked almost out of place among the dim lights and loud music. Too composed, too mature. My friends noticed him instantly. "Janet, that's him?" one whispered, eyes wide. Wow. I felt a strange spark of pride, followed immediately by something heavier when I saw how their gazes lingered. Luther greeted us warmly, and within minutes my friends had surrounded him, peppering him with questions. Where had he been studying? What was life abroad like? Did he have a girlfriend? I tried to laugh it off, sipping my drink, but each giggle, each playful touch on his arm from them, made my stomach tighten. I told myself it was just protective instinct, cousin looking out for cousin, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. At some point, I caught myself studying him in a way I never had before. His profile under the dim neon lights, the way his lips curved when he smirked, the strength in his forearm as he lifted his glass. I remembered the scrawny boy with grass-stained knees, and the contrast almost startled me. He was handsome, unquestionably so, and my friends weren't blind to it either. The night wore on, the music grew louder, and my patience wore thinner. My friends laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, leaned in a little too close. He didn't push them away, but he didn't exactly encourage them either. His eyes kept flicking to me, as if checking my reaction. That only made my pulse race faster. I couldn't explain the feeling, but jealousy burned low and steady in my chest. My friends weren't supposed to look at him that way. He wasn't supposed to look back. Finally, I decided I'd had enough. I excused myself from the table, tugged at his sleeve as he passed by, and whispered, "Come with me." Without waiting for an answer, I led him down the hallway toward the restrooms, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. I didn't even know what I intended. Maybe just to talk, maybe to reclaim a piece of him that felt like it was slipping away in the laughter and attention of others. We stopped near the door, and for a moment, there was only silence, the muffled thump of bass from the bar, the hum of the fluorescent light above us. His eyes on mine. "Janet," he said, voice low, questioning. I opened my mouth, searching for words, but none came. Instead, something heavier, stronger than thought itself, pulled us together. One moment, I was staring into his eyes. The next, his lips were on mine. The kiss was clumsy at first, too sudden, too desperate, but it deepened quickly, as though we had both been holding back for far too long. My hand found the edge of his shirt, his fingers brushed against my cheek, and every nerve in my body sparked alive. It wasn't planned, it wasn't right, but it felt inevitable. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, there was no going back. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. We both knew. Chapter 3: The Crossing. For a few heartbeats after the kiss, we just stood there, staring at each other like strangers who had crossed some invisible line. The music from the bar thudded faintly through the walls, muffled and distant, as though it belonged to another world entirely. I felt dizzy, as if I had stepped too close to a cliff and couldn't decide whether to step back or let myself fall. Luther's hand brushed against mine, tentative, uncertain, but undeniably real. "We should maybe go," he said softly, glancing toward the hallway that led back to the noise and our waiting friends. "Yes," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I meant go back or go further. We didn't return to the booth. Almost without speaking, we left the bar together. The night air hit me with a rush of coolness, thick with the smell of rain that hadn't yet fallen. Streetlights cast long golden pools on the pavement, and the laughter from inside faded behind us. The question trembled in the air between us. What now? Finally, Luther stopped beneath a flickering street lamp. He looked at me, his eyes searching, conflicted. "Janet, this is wrong." I laughed, though my voice was shaking. "I know, but I can't stop thinking about it," he confessed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "Since the moment I saw you again." The raw honesty in his tone broke something open in me. I stepped closer, feeling my heartbeat hammer against my ribs. "Do you think I don't feel it too?" That was all it took. His resolve faltered, and the distance between us collapsed. His arms wrapped around me, and I was kissing him again. This time without hesitation, without guilt. The streetlight flickered. The city moved around us, but none of it mattered. When we pulled apart, breathless, I didn't have to say the words. He already knew. A taxi passed, headlights slicing through the night, and Luther raised his hand. The car slowed, and without another thought, we climbed in. Neither of us gave an address for home. Instead, he leaned forward and said quietly to the driver, "The nearest hotel." The ride was a blur. I remember the hum of the engine, the streaks of neon lights across the windows, the warmth of Luther's thigh pressed against mine. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. Everything had already been decided the moment our lips met. When the car stopped, we slipped out like conspirators. The hotel was unremarkable, cheap, dimly lit, with a tired-looking receptionist who barely glanced at us as Luther paid for a room. My hands trembled when he pressed the keycard into my palm, his fingers lingering on mine for just a second too long. The elevator ride stretched into eternity. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneven, and I could feel his gaze on me, though I didn't dare meet it. When the doors finally slid open, we stepped into the quiet hallway. My heels clicked against the carpet as we found the room. The keycard beeped, the lock released, and then we were inside. The air felt different there, thicker, charged. I turned to him, words rising to my lips, but they died when he closed the door behind us. For a moment, we just stood there, the weight of everything pressing down. Then he crossed the space between us and kissed me again, harder this time. Like he had been holding back for years. It wasn't careful anymore. It wasn't hesitant. It was desperate, inevitable, unstoppable. And in that room, under the muted glow of a single lamp, we let the world slip away. That night, something happened between us. Something I had no name for. Something I knew would change everything. It wasn't just about crossing a line. It was about shattering it completely. When it was over, we lay side by side in the silence, our breaths slowly evening out. My head rested on his shoulder, and for the first time since childhood, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Chapter 4. The morning after. The morning light was merciless. It spilled through the thin curtains, pale and cold, stripping away the haze of the night before. I blinked against it, my body heavy, my mind fogged, until the reality of where I was and who I was lying next to came crashing back. Luther was still asleep, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. In sleep, he looked younger, softer, more like the boy I remembered from childhood than the man who had turned my world upside down just hours earlier. His arm rested loosely around my waist, and for a fleeting moment I let myself sink into the comfort of it. But the comfort didn't last. A wave of panic rose in me, sharp and suffocating. What had we done? My cousin, my blood. No matter how much I tried to twist it, no matter how intoxicating last night had been, the truth clawed at me. We had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I slipped from the bed as quietly as I could, gathering my clothes in trembling hands. My reflection in the mirror startled me. Hair tangled, lips still swollen from his kisses, eyes wide with something between fear and desire. I barely recognized myself. Behind me, Luther stirred. "Janet?" His voice was rough, thick with sleep. I froze, my dress half-buttoned. I was just... He sat up, running a hand over his face, and looked at me with a seriousness that made my stomach twist. "We need to talk," he said quietly. I laughed, too high-pitched, too brittle. "Talk? What's there to say? It happened. It's done." He shook his head, frustration flashing across his face. "Then why did it feel like the opposite? Tell me that. Why did it feel like it was supposed to happen?" My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to believe him, to let his certainty erase all my doubt. But another part, the rational, terrified part, knew better. "It was a mistake," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "It has to be." He shook his head, pressing his forehead against mine. For a moment we stayed like that, our breaths mingling, caught between wanting and fear. Then he pulled back, his jaw tight. "Fine, we'll keep it a secret. No one has to know." The word secret lodged itself in my chest like a stone. It was both a relief and a prison sentence. We dressed in silence after that, each lost in our own thoughts. When we finally stepped out of the hotel, the city was already awake. Cars rushing past, shopkeepers unlocking doors, sunlight glinting off windows. Everything looked painfully ordinary, as if the world hadn't shifted beneath our feet. As we walked toward the bus stop, I felt the weight of invisible eyes on us, though no one paid us any attention. I kept my hands shoved deep in my pockets, terrified that if I let them hang free, they might find his again. Luther broke the silence fast. "We'll figure this out, one step at a time." I glanced at him, his profile sharp against the morning light. He sounded so certain, so steady, as if he truly believed we could carry this secret without it destroying us. I wished I could believe it too. But even in that fragile hope, I knew something fundamental had changed. There was no going back to our childhood, to simple innocence. Something new, something dangerous had been set in motion. Chapter 5: The Choice. In the days that followed, I tried to convince myself that life could return to normal. I laughed with my friends, went shopping with my mother, even joined my cousins for a lazy afternoon in the park. On the surface, everything looked the same, but beneath it, a secret pulsed, dangerous and alive. Every time I glanced at Luther across the dinner table, every time our hands brushed by accident, every time his eyes lingered just a fraction too long, I felt the weight of it pressing down. We didn't talk about that night, not directly, but the silence between us was louder than any confession. When he caught me staring, I'd look away too quickly. When he asked if I was free, I always found excuses, even though my heart screamed otherwise. Avoidance was futile. One evening, about a week after the bar, he found me alone on the back porch of our grandmother's house. The summer air was warm, filled with the scent of lilacs. I sat curled in a chair, pretending to read, though I hadn't turned a page in half an hour. "Janet," he said quietly, stepping into the soft light. I didn't look up. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," he countered, his tone sharper than usual. "You've been avoiding me." "Maybe for a reason." He exhaled, coming closer. "I can't do this. Pretend nothing happened. Pretend I don't feel what I feel." My throat tightened. I set the book aside and finally met his gaze. His expression was raw, unguarded, filled with the same storm I felt inside myself. "You think I don't?" I whispered. "Do you have any idea what it's like trying to smile and laugh while feeling like I'm falling apart inside? You're my cousin, Luther. This isn't just forbidden, it's impossible." He leaned against the railing, jaw clenched. And yet, it happened. It wasn't an accident. You know it, and I know it. The truth of his words was unbearable. That night hadn't been a mistake. It had been inevitable. I stood, pulse racing, torn between fleeing and closing the distance between us. So what then? We just, what, keep sneaking around, ruin our family, destroy everything? For a long moment, he was silent. Then, softly he said, "Or we trust what we felt. We keep it ours, just ours. No one else has to know." The idea was intoxicating, terrifying, but intoxicating. To keep something so powerful, so dangerous, hidden between just the two of us. A secret world where no one could judge. I looked at him, the boy I had grown up with, the man who now stood before me, and I realized there was no escaping this. Not really. The bond between us wasn't going to vanish. It had been there all along, buried beneath years of innocence, waiting to surface. "I don't know if I can live like that," I admitted, my voice breaking. He stepped closer, close enough that I could feel his warmth, his presence surrounding me. "Then don't think about forever. Just think about tonight and tomorrow, one step at a time." His words settled over me like a fragile promise. Not forever, just now. I should have walked away. I should have told him no, put an end to it before it went further. But instead, I let him pull me into his arms, and for a moment, the world was silent again. No judgment, no consequences, just us. When he kissed me, I knew I had made my choice. Not the safe one, not the easy one, but mine. And as much as fear lingered in the back of my mind, I couldn't deny the truth. I would rather risk everything than go back to the way things were before. Because there was no going back, not anymore.